Hey everyone, welcome into our latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. I am your host, Shad Dales, and today we're connecting some really important dots. On one side, we've got the White House announcing the launch of a new drug buying website called TrumpRx with the deal tied directly to Pfizer. Then on the other side, we've got the ongoing conversation about cannabis rescheduling. So the question here is, what happens if you put these two developments together? And more importantly, what does that mean for the cannabis industry if rescheduling indeed does happen? So let's walk you through step by step in our latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. So let's first begin about what TrumpRx is all about. The big headline earlier this week is that the administration is rolling out a brand new website called TrumpRx. So think of it as an official government-backed online platform where Americans can go to buy prescription drugs at lower costs, which has been on the radar of this current administration. So the White House says this will make it easier for people to compare prices, find discounts, and in some cases, purchase directly. And to launch this program, the administration has already struck a deal with Pfizer, which we know is one of the biggest names in the global pharmaceutical landscape. So now, why does this matter for us here in cannabis? Well, because if the government is building a direct-to-consumer drug platform, it could open the door for future categories, and cannabis, if rescheduled, could eventually be one of them. Now, I know some people could be a little indifferent on how this could all play out, so let's walk you through a little bit more on this. So we've talked many times on this show about rescheduling, and no, I'm not going to get into the weeds today about the 280E tax code or the fine print. Instead, let's take a look at the bigger picture here. So first thing we have to look at is if cannabis moves out of Schedule 1 and into Schedule 3, it becomes federally recognized as medicine. So that then means cannabis isn't just treated as an illegal substance anymore. It gets a seat at the table in the healthcare system. So now you add in TrumpRx into the mix. So if there's a government-backed website designed to deliver lower-cost medicines, could cannabis-derived treatments eventually be listed right alongside traditional drugs? Maybe not immediately, but let's face it, the path is indeed there. And if that does happen, it's not just about cannabis companies anymore. Big Pharma suddenly has every reason to take a closer look at this, because we've heard it's really not on their radar right now, but that could change if rescheduling were to happen. So let's pause here. Big Pharma has always been the giant elephant in the room when it comes to cannabis. These companies have the labs, the patents, the sales networks, and the lobbying power. But what they've never really had is the green light from Washington to fully engage. But as we know, rescheduling could be that green light for many of them. So imagine Pfizer already launched a partner with TrumpRx, deciding to partner with a cannabis company on a CBD sleep product or a THC pain therapy. So you look at and you can imagine Merck or Johnson & Johnson, they file new research on cannabinoids because now the regulatory barrier is lower. So that doesn't necessarily mean they take over the cannabis industry overnight, but what it does mean is that cannabis starts shifting from being a counterculture product into something much more integrated with mainstream healthcare. And whether you love or hate Big Pharma, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here that do hate Big Pharma, it's undeniable. If they step into this space, it changes the game forever. So let's now take a step back and think about the bigger shift this represents. When we look back for decades, cannabis has been on the outside of the healthcare system. As we know, doctors couldn't prescribe it, insurance wouldn't cover it, patients had to go through state programs or buy from dispensaries. But now when you factor this in for the first time, the government is building a direct-to-consumer platform for prescription drugs at lower costs. Then you combine that with the possibility of cannabis being rescheduled, and suddenly the idea of cannabis as part of mainstream healthcare isn't just speculation anymore. It's a real possibility. So this could indeed mark the beginning of cannabis being integrated into American healthcare in a meaningful way. Really not just something you pick up from a dispensary anymore, but something you discuss with your doctor, access through an official program, and maybe even get reimbursed for under insurance or Medicare. But of course, in all this, there's also some politics here. Both President Trump and RFK Jr. have been vocal about their distrust of Big Pharma. They've attacked these companies for high drug prices, for overreach, and for their role in America's healthcare struggles. But here's the paradox here. Rescheduling cannabis and launching TrumpRx could end up pulling Big Pharma into cannabis, not keeping them out. So what do you get? On one side, political leaders attacking Big Pharma for being too powerful, but then on the other side, creating conditions where Big Pharma becomes a central player in cannabis. Do you like that? Well, the tension is worth watching closely here. So now let's bring this into the cannabis industry and really to you, the investor right now that's watching this. If rescheduling is announced and cannabis gets more legitimacy in the healthcare system, we should expect two things. First, Big Pharma indeed will show more interest, maybe partnerships, maybe acquisitions, maybe just more research. Then second, you have the value of being a federally recognized medicine will start to get priced into cannabis stocks. So right now, as we know, a lot of cannabis companies trade like they're stuck in limbo. But if investors see that Pfizer or another giant could come into the space, that narrative will indeed change quickly. But it doesn't mean it's smooth sailing. It does mean cannabis could start attracting a whole new class of investors, from institutional money to healthcare-focused funds. Something to think about here. But when you factor all this in, let's not get carried away. Let's talk about what the cannabis industry should be cautious about in all this. Because while Big Pharma entering the space could bring legitimacy and capital, it could also reshape the market in ways smaller cannabis companies need to prepare for. Number one, indeed, is pricing power. If cannabis products end up on a government-backed site like TrumpRx, the expectation will be to lower costs for consumers. So that's great for patients, but it could also put pressure on margins for existing operators. Then there's number two, which clearly is competition. Pharma companies already have huge advantages when it comes to research, patents, and regulatory expertise. If they do indeed decide to move quickly into cannabinoids, they could outpace a lot of the current players, and that's just the reality. And number three, which is a big one, they control the narrative. For years, cannabis companies and advocates have told the story of cannabis as wellness, as community, as a culture. Once Big Pharma is involved, that story could shift towards a purely medical and pharmaceutical framing. So the cannabis industry has to decide to hold on to its voice in this conversation. And then you got number four, which is access. Some of the industry does indeed worry that if cannabis is rescheduled, patients might only be able to access it through traditional pharmaceutical system. So that means going through doctors, pharmacies, and insurance instead of dispensaries. And that is a concern for many in the cannabis space. And if that happens, Big Pharma indeed becomes the gatekeeper. And that could limit choice, restrict access, and cut smaller cannabis operators out of the equation. So while the opportunities are indeed real, the challenges are too. And it's important for the cannabis industry to not just welcome the change, but also prepare for it. And that is the truth. And before we wrap up here today, just a quick word from our sponsor, Dutchie. With Dutchie running your cannabis retail operations, it's simple, reliable, and it's modern. From point of sale to e-commerce, Dutchie offers tools built for the regulated market so you can scale smarter and not harder. If you want to learn more and you run a dispensary, visit business.dutchie.com and get started today. So to wrap this up, here are the big takeaways. With the launch of TrumpRx, we could be witnessing the start of cannabis being folded into the American healthcare system. Let's face it, rescheduling would be the trigger, Big Pharma would be the accelerant, and the government's new platform could be the infrastructure that ties this all together. For patients, that could mean easier access and lower costs. For the industry, it could mean legitimacy and new opportunities. And for investors, it could mark the beginning of a new growth story. But for the cannabis sector itself, there's also caution. You got to prepare for new competition, new pricing pressures, and possibly a system where Big Pharma becomes the primary gatekeeper. And that is, let's face it, a concern. The companies in the end that adapt, they will indeed thrive. The ones that don't, well, they'll struggle and probably not be around. The question now is simple. If cannabis is truly on the edge of rescheduling, is this first step towards a healthcare revolution or redefinition of the industry as we know it? And it will be redefined. Regardless of what happens, we'll be here to follow every single move. So stay connected and smash on that bell for all notifications. As well, if you like the breakdown of this video, give it a like and make sure to subscribe to our channel. We'd appreciate it here at the TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. I know this is a story that people are looking at. Is it good? Is it bad? Still a lot of unknowns. But one thing that we do know, if rescheduling is announced, you can bet Big Pharma is going to step in rather soon. With that, enjoy the rest of your day. And like I always say, I'll see you in the next video. This is the latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales, and thanks again for watching.